Have you ever wondered what goes on inside of a doll hospital? Or have you ever sent a doll in to get fixed before? Hi, my name is Catherine, and I'm here with Encore Excursions with Harris County Precinct 4, and we're at the Doll Hospital in Spring, learning about what goes on inside.
Good morning. Welcome to the Doll Hospital in Old Town Spring. We are a family-owned business. We've been out here in Old Town Spring for 38 years. This is actually our third location in Spring, and we've been here the longest. This building was actually built for us to be the anchor by the people who used to own this property. So we have been here quite a few years. My name is Ann Pizzolato. I'm originally from the Northeast, and I graduated as a chemical engineer from Rutgers University. And I studied and worked in that field for a number of years until the oil business went bust. And then we started the Doll Hospital because it was a passion. I loved dolls as a child, learned how to repair dolls. There was a need in the community, so here we are. People have asked, do we work on old dolls? Do we work on new dolls? We work on pretty much all dolls. There are just one category of dolls that we don't work on anymore, and that is celluloid. Celluloid is a very thin material. We call it 1,000-year-old eggshells. It's very, very brittle. Back in the early 1900s, celluloid collars and combs were very popular. Some dolls were made of celluloid. We had a lot of dolls that came from Germany because there was a big factory in Germany that manufactured celluloid dolls. But they have gotten too brittle at this point in time for us to be able to work on them, and we don't work on them anymore. We work on American Girl all the time. New wigs, put their arms and legs back on, just give them a general cleanup. We call that a spa day. The girls come in and they need to have everything refreshed. We do that on old dolls, we do that on new dolls. Just make it what we call factory, as close as we can to factory fresh. These babies are antique German dolls. This is a character baby from about 1910. It was done by Hertel and Schwab. She has a porcelain head. This is the Bilo baby. A lot of people had a Bilo. The other doll that was done, that was the direct competition to the Bilo, is the Dream Baby. I don't have one to show you, but sometimes people think they have a Bilo and it's a Dream Baby. Well, they have a Dream Baby and they think they have a Dream Baby and it's a Bilo. They were done at the same time. They were done about 1923. The Bilo baby was designed by Grace Putnam. She decided that there was not a doll being manufactured that looked like a newborn baby. And she traveled around the country to the maternity hospitals and did sketching. And then she sculpted this little head, this little Bilo baby. And she went to the German doll manufacturers, who were all men, by the way, and said, "Can you manufacture this doll for me?" And they said, "That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I wouldn't do that." Well, there was one man that took a flyer on her, and his name was George Borgfeld. He was not a manufacturer, he was a distributor out of Philadelphia. So he contracted with the manufacturers to have the doll made. So most major German manufacturers actually made a Bilo head. There's not any one manufacturer that you can say they made this particular head, but they're all marked copyright Grace S. Putnam. And then they were sent to his warehouse in Philadelphia where they were assembled. The Bilo baby and the Dream baby are the only dolls that are measured by their head circumference, not their body length, because the bodies were hand manufactured and they were never the same. And they had different styles of bodies. Most of the time they had what we call the frog body because their legs bent in like a frog. Some had straight legs. Some were actually done on composition. Armand Marseille manufactured Bilo babies, and then he said, "I can do better." And he sculpted the Dream baby. And in Christmas of 1923, both dolls hit the market. The Bilo was more expensive. Armand Marseille was a prolific manufacturer. He wanted everybody to have one of his dolls. So they were less expensive and they were more available. So if you got a buy low, you were very fortunate because it was more expensive and there were fewer of them. And they came in sizes from this big to this big, full baby size. So they're pretty cool dolls. This is a little infant that was also manufactured by Armand Marseille about the same time. This is what he was making before he did the Dream Baby. Another question we get a lot of is, do we make dolls? At one time we did porcelain dolls when it was a popular thing. We don't make those kind of dolls anymore. It's a fairly tedious process. We do Reborn Dolls, but at this point with all the COVID going on, we're not even doing that. We have a few handmade Reborns in the shop, but for the most part, we have brand new dolls, we have vintage and antique dolls, and we have some pre-owned modern dolls. There's a lot of discussion about Reborn Dolls and what every little girl looks at YouTube videos and wants a reborn. There are a lot of categories of reborn. Reborn is not a type of doll, it's a category of doll. And you have everything from manufactured reborns, like these dolls up here, to handmade, literally one-of-a-kind reborns. These dolls come as kits, and they're blank, and the coloring is kind of like a yellowish color. And they have to be painted to look like this. The hair has to be hand-rooted, little pieces by little pieces. Lots of hours of work. In between paintings, they have to be baked, so they set the paint. So you're looking at lots and lots of hours for a true reborn. It's almost a one of a kind. There may be 350 kits with this face, a certain number of those kits that are available. And people started buying those and doing their own reborns. The kit is born. When you finish it, it's reborn. One of the most famous dolls out there, I think, is probably Shirley Temple. Everybody recognizes Shirley Temple. Ideal had the rights to produce the Shirley Temple doll, and she was initially done from 1934 to 1939 in composition. This is an original Shirley, and this is an original Shirley. And these two girls are lookalikes. But they do have the dimples, and they do have the mohair, and they do have glass eyes. You'll see all different kinds of versions of Shirley out there. She was initially done 34 to 39, then Ideal reintroduced her in 1957 as Shirley Temple, the ingenue, because she was in her 20s by then. But that doll didn't sell. So they revamped that doll and made the 57 Shirley into a vinyl version of the 1934 Shirleys. And they did the Shirley Temple dresses that everybody recognizes, the stand-up and chair, the dance dress. Then they reintroduced her in 1972, and then again in 1983. We have worked on a lot of dolls that come out of unfortunate events like the hurricanes, like Katrina, Ike, Harvey. We do a lot of that kind of restoration. We do a lot of fire and flood restoration. There are very few that can't be salvaged. There are degrees of being able to be salvaged. Sometimes we can take it from what happened to almost looking new and anything in between. But before you randomly throw it away, I would say that, let us take a look at it. All we can do is tell you, yeah, you're right, it's got to go away. But especially with mold, we treat things with mold all the time. I have a special room that we have to treat them in. Hazmat we have to use hazmat to get rid of things that we've used or things we're taking out of the dolls. So it's a big process, but if it's dear enough and it's something that you want to do, at least let us take a look at it. So when someone comes in to bring a doll for restoration, this is the first place they come. This is our admitting table, and it's very soft. Because if you've ever been to the hospital, they sit you on those really hard metal tables, and we don't want that. And we do an examination, an evaluation of the doll. And when we're complete with that, then the customer will tell us yes, I'd like to proceed, or no, I would not. If we proceed, then I will get a hospital tag, and they will be given a hospital bed number. So that everybody has to be somewhere. That's how we track the dolls in the hospital. And after they leave here, they go to our triage area where they are assessed further, plus we tag and notate all the clothing that comes in, everything that is with the doll, so that when they go home, we refer to that so we know that they go home with everything they came with except for the dirt. We don't send that home, or the old stuffing. Then they proceed into our restoration area. We have several areas that we work in where we have more complex restoration. I have a studio that we do the high-tech stuff because it's noisy. You have an air compressor for an airbrush, and it's messy for when we're working on composition dolls. So we can't do that physically here, but I have a studio that we work in that's done in. And then coming back through the process, then they go and sit in our little waiting area to have their final work done, which is going to be their hair and their clothes. So when they get their hair and clothes done, they're sitting back here, and then they move to our recovery area where they're waiting for their moms to come get them. People will ask how long it's going to take to repair their dolls. And that is very dependent on what we have to do and also who the doll belongs to. Because if it's a child's piece, we always expedite. They get first priority. And older persons that, may be up in age and perhaps are ill, we always try to expedite their pieces because we want them to be able to see them should their time come before that. It's hard to give an average because it's going to depend on, again, workload and what we have to do, but somewhere between 1 month to 6 months. And that's a real wide range, but something in there will generally be how we work. Cost is very dependent on what we do. And restringing a small doll could start at $25. If we have to do a major composition restoration or a major porcelain restoration, you could be looking at $300 and up. So it just really is going to be dependent on what has to be done. I believe the oldest doll that we ever fixed was a wax over porcelain, and that would have been from 17 some odd or another. We did that that was a museum restoration for the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And that was a very dicey restoration because she still had original clothes, which we had to clean and process very gently. But she came out pretty well. They seemed to be pleased, so I guess we did okay. The most valuable doll I think we ever fixed was a French that came out of New Orleans area, and we picked it up when we were doing doll shows in that area. People had seen our ad, and this woman had this doll in a shoebox from her childhood, and her husband said, let's go see if they can fix it, let's go talk about it. Well, when they came in and showed me, and there would usually be a large crowd, people bringing their dolls in, and I turned to my husband and said, push everyone away from me, please, because everyone would listen. If you remember that commercial where, they used to say, E.F. Hutton, listen, and everybody would listen. That's how I felt. And when I had opened the shoebox, I'm rarely at loss for words, but I just kind of went, no, and in my head I'm going, this is not what I think it is. This is really, really not what I think it is. Well, it was. It was a doll that was done by Foulier. There are probably only 10 of these dolls known in the world. And the nice lady who owned it told me that her grandmother had bought it in an antique store in New Orleans for her as a child. And this woman was in her 40s at that time, so 40 years before that, and this doll would have dated from the late 1800s. And the last time that I had tracked a Foulier that wasn't broken, it was going for somewhere in the area of $100,000. and they have gone up from there because there are very few. We were able to restore the doll, and of course it didn't have that kind of value because the head was broken, but we did invisible restoration on it. And we were able to present it to her back in the original clothes, which is what she had been dressed in, which were silk, and they were just stunning. But that was the Picasso in the attic story, because they had no idea what they had. I have been asked a number of times how you can get into doing doll repair. Realistically, the only way to do it is to become an apprentice to someone who is currently doing doll repair. You can certainly watch videos and you can certainly fool around with it on your own. But to do a proper restoration, if you're going to do it for people, if you're just doing your own, it probably doesn't matter if you don't really get it right. But if you're going to do it for people that are coming in and paying you money, then you need to know what you're doing. Over the years, I have researched, I have studied. My background in chemical engineering has taken me to different levels. There are a lot of people who say they do doll repair, but not to the depth of what we do, because we have investigated what needs to be done. There's an old saying that if one man can engineer it, another man can reverse engineer it, and I say man in that general sense, since I'm not a man. But between myself and my husband, who is a mechanical engineer, if we can't fix it, it doesn't need to be fixed. It can't be fixed. Because there aren't very many people that do this, I get calls from people all over the country that say, "Where are you located?" And I'll say, "Well, where are you?" And they'll say, "I'm in Utah, I'm in Michigan, I'm in Los Angeles." There aren't a lot of local people that do this anymore. The other biggest doll hospital in the country shut down last year. I don't know, where this is going. We don't have a lot of young people who want to learn. I have people that have been working for me for anywhere from 10 to 25 years, and we're still all learning. And there's really no young people who want to learn. No one in my family wanted to take up the mantle, as it were. So when the day comes that we shut down, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if there's going to be anybody there to do the big restorations. The minor things, there'll be people who will do that, but the big restorations, don't know.
Wow, that was really neat. Thank you so much for joining us on another Encore excursion, and we look forward to seeing you at our next exciting destination.